Awesome. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the celebration of Mike Williams. I came to Jordan Matthews in 2015 as an assistant principal and met Mike for the first time. He said, hey, we were standing outside my office door and I was being introduced to everybody. And he said, hey, I see you like the Oklahoma Sooners. And he was pointing at my office filled with a ton of memorabilia. And I said, yeah, that's where I got my undergraduate degree, and that's where I grew up and where my dad still lives. And Mike kind of cocked his head and he goes, that's too bad. I really thought I was going to like you. So, he then gave that famous Mike laugh that we all know and love. And he proceeded to talk about his love of the Ohio State Buckeyes. I had gained a wonderful new friend. Mike was giving, he was kind, he was funny, and most of all, he was a dedicated friend, mentor, and teacher. One of my favorite qualities about Mike was his ability to take in any situation with a calm measure, a dose of humor, and sage advice. One of my favorite stories of Mike was when I was doing an observation of him, and he was conducting his pickle lab. Everyone was very serious with their lab trays and their dill pickles and the other implements that he had out for it. And I was roaming around the tables and I was asking students questions. And when I got to Mike, I said, Mike, this is great. This is such a cool lesson. And in his typical Mike fashion, he said, yeah, the kids always think it's a big deal and they really relish this part. Everybody just groaned at that one. And he just laughed. His typical Mike laugh. This just exemplifies how Mike approached life and teaching every single day. Mike was most proud of his students and his Jordan Matthews family. He demonstrated that every day with his willingness to volunteer anytime we were shorthanded. And he attended all kinds of sporting and arts events, and he always congratulated or encouraged his students the next day when he saw them in school. Did you know that he came in every single day during COVID to school so he could be available to his students and make sure that his online lessons were never interrupted due to internet fluctuations? He made time for all of his students and they loved him back wholeheartedly. Mike would be so touched to see you all here today. He loved being part of an extended family, especially when we were all celebrating something special. And let me tell you, Mike Williams was that something special.
When I began looking for a passage that summed up Mike's loss, I kept returning to Robert Frost. In his poem, Nothing Gold Can Stay, he both celebrates the beauty of the natural world, which meant so much to Mike, and expressed the grief that all beautiful moments inevitably must change. After the poem, please join me in a moment of silence in memory of Mike and his beautiful life. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. her early leaves a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. I am really glad that I had the chance to meet some of Mike's family members yesterday, and I really appreciate you guys making the trip to Siler City. I think that if Mike knew I was the one speaking, he would brace himself and say, completely monotone, "Great." Not in a rude way, but just in that Mike way that made it that much better when he would break out in laughter, because he was usually so even-keeled, but his laughter was truly infectious. And I spent many Wednesday nights joining in that laughter at the Carolina Brewery in Pittsburgh, where we would play trivia. Mike was a regular to trivia with his own team, but once myself and two of our co-workers decided to start going, we had to kidnap Mike and bring him to our team. And he did sacrifice a lot of wins to play with us, bless him. A group of English teachers and me and Mike, the interlopers, would eat lunch together back when teachers had lunch breaks and times were precedented. On Thursdays, we would share our trivia highlights. I have so many stories from trivia nights, but I think we all have the same favorite one that I want to share today, slightly edited. So one night, they announced that the next trivia round was going to be collective animal names, like an obstinacy of buffalo or a caravan of camels. And once they announced that, I was pumped. I was telling Mike and Ting Lam and Sarah Harris, I was like, I'm so good at these. We're gonna crush this round. We won't come in last this week. So they asked the first question, apes. And I whisper screamed, crap, to my table, because I did not know that one. And as soon as I said, crap, Mike said, I don't think that's it. So that doesn't sound right. And Mike was correct. It's called a shrewdness of apes and not a crap of apes. And we barely made it through the rest of that round because we were a cackle of hyenas after that. Another time at trivia, I ended up laughing so hard at my own joke that I spit out my drink on Mike. He was so gracious though, and he thought that made the whole thing funnier. And I believe the professionals call this Stockholm Syndrome. Mike was such a supportive friend. Several times he would just buy our dinners after trivia. He did introduce us to the teacher's discount at the Carolina Brewery. He came to the Pittsburgh Craft Fair to support me and buy a wreath for me, even though I normally just gave him wreaths for free for his classroom, and he pretended to be the type of person that was excited about a decorative wreath. He opened his home to friends going through hard times. When there was a bug in my apartment, which was often, I would joke that I was just going to move into Mike's house without asking him or telling him. And I know that he would have let me, and he knows I would never do that because he does not have internet. So in our group chat, we would have to wait for him to leave his house to participate. And during the pandemic, we really missed those weekly trivia games. So one week we decided to just have a Zoom trivia session. And Mike went into town so he could join from his phone, but he kept getting interrupted by all of his friends at 580 because he was so popular. Everybody liked him, everyone wanted to interact with him because he was so funny, so kind. That's the type of person he was. I also got to work with Mike when I joined the Avid team. My very first group of Avid juniors included Mike's Avid kids, and he taught that group of kids every day for 2 years, some of them even for 4 years, and they loved him so much they called him their Avid dad. And that group was the graduating class of 2020, so their senior year was cut short. The pandemic affected a lot of JM families and students. A lot of students became teachers for their siblings who were taking school at home now. A lot of students had to get a job to help with bills if their parents were laid off due to COVID shutdowns. So when our yearbook advisor reached out to the faculty to see if anyone wanted to donate a yearbook to a student, Mike made sure that every one of his Avid students had a yearbook to commemorate their senior year. He ended up personally paying for 12 yearbooks, hundreds of dollars. Thank you to yearbook advisor Jessica Kemry for finding this quote from Mike, who emailed her to purchase the yearbooks. I've been with them for at least 2 years, and 4 of them for all 4 years, and they're a great group of kids. I hate that their senior year ended this way, so I'm hoping that this will help ease the blow, so to speak, and give them something positive they can look at years down the road when they tell their stories. Mike's Avid kids adored him. That was both apparent and understandable to everyone. He was the kind of teacher who had high standards for his students and inspired them to meet those standards. He extended so much grace to his group, always willing to defend a student or give them another chance, even when it meant making more work for himself. And Mike volunteered for so many gate duties that honestly the whole system is probably going to collapse. So if we have to cancel any athletic events, I'm sorry. It is okay to cry when you remember Mike, to cry for what we have lost, but it's also okay to smile, remembering his kindness and generosity. But most importantly, it's okay to laugh when you remember those Mike stories that we all have. Like when Mike willingly waded through a sea of staff members to find Lee Shore for a long-awaited welcome back from summer hug. Or when he would accidentally save Snapchats in our group message without realizing what he was doing. Or whenever you think about a crap of apes. Or how hearing a loud droid out of nowhere meant that Mike was near. Thank you.
I'd like to start by giving a big thank you to everyone present and to everyone who has shown their support during this time. I'm sure Mr. Williams would be more than grateful for this amount of love and support. He was never really one to make a big deal out of compliments, gifts, and the such. Always giving a small thank you and grin whenever I would thank him and bring him small souvenirs from like college trips. Although I know deep down he truly appreciated all the love his students showed him. It was that same grin that instantly made me feel better as I walked down the hall and he'd be standing outside his room waiting for his students, or as I log into Zoom and open up his class link only to be met with that same grin. He'd blast his music so loud I swear my desk would shake, acting as if it wasn't 8 a.m. and I hadn't woken up only 5 minutes before. Way too loud for his rock and roll or his classic hits. Yet I couldn't help but crack a smile of my own watching him. Everything he did for the students, he did for the students. You could really tell he enjoyed what he was doing. And it was so clear he truly cared for his students. I remember the countless times I would go into his classroom only to rant about whatever, a class, music, colleges. And I know it was the same for many others. I remember all the times I came to home games and he'd be at his little station in the ticket booth and we'd have a little back and forth, usually ending with him making fun of me and telling me to enjoy the game. I remember when Courtney, Ashley, and I would sit outside his classroom and he'd supervise us in our online class. We sat on the cold floor until eventually we'd end up with numb butts. It wasn't always like that though. This one day as we were walking to his class, we turned the corner and there we saw 3 full-on desks, because he knew it sucked sitting out there on that floor. We would also constantly call him out there for help in our class, and there he'd come dragging his feet or stomping before saying, "What do you want?" and giving us a big sigh and an eye roll. I remember when Courtney and I would just put on music and start singing our hearts out, only for him to come outside and yell, "Shut up." Or when he'd come out and tell us we sucked before slamming the door behind him. It's funny seeing as how we would also bug him to judge us on our singing when we had like auditions and stuff. He'd be genuine with us, you know? He'd give us honest advice and cheer us on. Of course, he'd also give us the occasional, "That was it," and the, "That was horrible." It's the little things, those are the ones that really get you. He didn't have to listen to my rants, he didn't have to start up conversations, he didn't have to get us those desks, he didn't have to help us in our class, he didn't have to give us those little outbursts, and he didn't have to listen to our singing. But he did, and they all made a difference. Little things that many might brush off and forget. Yet here I am, talking about them. Making sure they're not forgotten. He never said he was busy, or that he didn't have the time. He never brushed us off. Instead, he was there. Always. Nothing was too big or too small for him. Trust me, I know. Because I asked him to write my letter of recommendation for colleges the day the application was due. And guess what he said? It wasn't a no. Instead, he said, "Give me what I need and I'll get to it right now." The whole day was stressful for both of us, I'm sure. He sent me a text message that day about Common App at 10:27 p.m. "It's done, ... Good luck," cross fingers emoji. My last message to him, "Thanks a million." For whatever reason, that text never sent. I told him the next time I saw him, but it wasn't the same. I felt like I was letting him down, and to this day I feel guilty. I'm sure he was still grateful when I told him in person. That was probably preferred anyways. But I still can't help but feel guilt for never giving him a proper thank you. That's the effect he had on people. It's the effect he had on me. He did his best and gave it his all for his students, so I had to do the same for him. And that's what I want to leave with you. Let's remember Mr. Williams for everything he did for people. All the big things and all the little things. Thank you, Mr. Williams, for listening when no one else did. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't. Thank you for everything.
Someday I wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I?
we now come to our time for sharing about Mike and his impact on our lives. So we have down here, we have two mics, one on this side and one over here. And we'd ask you to come down to the mic. And while one person is speaking, another person can come up to the other mic and kind of be ready if you'd like to do that. Please be careful coming down and make sure to walk behind the folks that are speaking. And so now we're going to open up our time for anyone who would like to share a memory of Mike.
Hey everyone. I'm always too short for that. I'm sure you have all heard the saying that it takes a big heart to be a teacher. I never understood this quote until meeting a couple of my high school teachers, including Mr. Williams. He was the most genuine and caring person, one of the funnest teachers, and one of the best at that. Going to his class was never a drag. The 45 minutes flew by because, like he said, time flies when you're having fun. Whether he was giving a presentation where he would skip a couple slides because, in his words, they're not that important, even though he was the one that made the slides. Or enunciating his love for working with teenage boys with an eye roll after hearing their conversations. It's so ironic how he always said that he never planned on being a teacher because he was just so great at it. Not only was he a great teacher, but he was great at giving advice, the most useful advice. He was an amazing listener. No matter how stressed out you were, a simple rant to Mr. Williams while he was online shopping on his laptop would help immensely. He was the kindest person and most supportive person. Whether you wanted to leave 400,000 miles for college or stay and do community college, you could always count on him to support you and help you in any way he could. Mr. Williams' advice, jokes, and overall aura will be greatly missed. It has been so hard for many of us to get up in the morning and go on with the day. It has been so hard to walk by the halls and not see him standing outside his class telling other teachers, "Watch out for her." Or walking by his class and waving. But like one of my best friends said, it's okay to not be okay. But let's all rejoice in the opportunity we had of having the chance of meeting him, having a great relationship with him, and the time we spent with him. Everyone in this room is extremely lucky to have known Mr. Williams, and knowing him is something I will forever be thankful for.
I had Mr. Williams for advisory, and let me just say that he's the best teacher that I've ever had, probably. Walking down the hall, Mr. Williams will always be like, "Ramon, I like your boots. Like, if no one else likes my outfits, I know that Mr. Williams does." First day of advisory, I'm like, "Where can I sit?" He goes, "Just sit down somewhere. You're getting on my nerves." I will forever miss Mr. Williams. There's always going to be a place in my heart for him.
So like in the beginning of the semester, I was an avid, and soon after I decided to leave, and he had seen like I was going through so much at the time, and like he'll be the only teacher that would check up on me. Like when I felt so alone at the time, and he'll be the only teacher that would ask me how I was okay. It's because he saw me at my worst. And the day that I left, he supported me and he had helped me with all my work. He was truly like my favorite teacher, and because of him, I could go on my day. And I'm gonna miss like leaving school and him seeing me with my yellow and black car that he always talked about, because I had it on all my binders and all my computer screen. You know, you never really realize like how just checking up on someone can mean so much. And he was a great person, and just like his death and everything, how everything can happen so suddenly really makes you have a perspective of how you should really cherish things, because they can leave in 1 second. Mr. Williams, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the times where you have helped me out and you were there for me when no one else was.
I didn't have Mr. Williams as an official teacher until last year, and even that was cut short because we didn't come to school till the end of the year. But as Wilson said before, we were sitting outside of his classroom sophomore year, and we struggled in that class a lot. But anytime we needed help, there he came, willing to help us in any way we needed, whether it be just listening to us rant, or just listening to us sing the same song over and over again. He was always there. This year, I had online classes, second block, which was his planning. So I spent many days in there just talking about anything, and he never closed his door on me. I knew that he was always there for anything I needed. I know that he meant a lot to a lot of students, and I know that they all meant a lot to him. And I'm really sad that I didn't get to know him sooner, but I know that even in the little time I did know him, that makes up for all the time that will be missed.
I had Mr. Williams during online school, and I had it all year, so I had him for the whole year. Well, I remember we had tutorials online, and I didn't like it. But my favorite part was when he'd come in, like the random breakout rooms, he'd be like, "Are y'all doing something?" Because, and well, I remember this one memory where I had braces, and this wire was poking my mouth really bad. And I was so comfortable with him to the point where I was like, "Do you have pliers or anything that I could use to like do something about it?" Well, he did. And he gave it to me. And I literally just pulled out a whole wire, and it was like this. And he was one of the only teachers I was so comfortable with. I had my quinceañera this year, and I remember I asked him for help for what to do with my makeup and my hair. to do. He picked it out, and I did exactly what he told me he wanted. And just to know he has that with me, it's really great. And just overall, he was an amazing teacher, one of my top for. And I'm just so happy I got to meet him and have him. And even whenever I don't have him, I would see him every day in the lunchroom, and he would always ask how I'm doing. Or I remember I dropped my fork. He'd pick it up for me, and he was just such a great person. Just, yeah.
Oh gosh. Not even 5 seconds here and I've already created such a scene. I'm sorry. I've heard this sentence floating around a while back that it takes only one person to make such an impact. And if I had to apply that sentence to anyone, it would be him. One of my fondest memories of him would be like the second week of school, where he was doing seating arrangements. And since the pandemic hit, we haven't had our Power School photos updated. So they were still, you know this one, it was still our middle school photos. I think you guys know where this is headed. But after he was done finishing our seating arrangements, he did a thing. After he was done, he zoomed out and then zoomed right into our faces. Each and every single one of them. He lingered on them. And I remember hearing the sound of the laughter in the room. Even his. Yeah, that was a thing. And I can recount so many memories like that. From his introduction, to the time where he let us pet his snake, to where he wrote riddles on the board, and kept candy in his cabinet. And he'd like take these seeds to the window. I don't know what it was. But he was still our teacher. I'm sorry, anyway, he was still our teacher. He was my avid teacher. He was our teacher. And it's hard. It's hard to move on. And I don't want to move on. Because there's just been a number of teachers in that classroom. But I think all of us are going to associate that classroom with Mr. Williams, Mike Williams, for probably forever. I only know him for 4 months. A lot of you know him for quite longer. And that's very fortunate. Because he truly was someone who cared about everyone around him, from his students, to his colleagues, to his family. He cared about every single one of them. He made sure to check on them, make sure they were okay. And that is someone who truly cared. Even thinking about it, I just don't want to accept it as my reality. Because it is hard. Because I don't want a teacher. I want my teacher. And it really is hard. probably going to remember for the rest of our lives. And that's okay. And knowing us right now, he'd probably say, "Stop crying." It only takes one person to make a big impact. That was Mike Williams.
So I had Mr. Williams for Avid this year, and I remember it was the first day of school, and it was his introduction, and he was introducing like his life about him and stuff like that, and so I remember he made this one remark about his ex-wife, and it was so funny because of the way he said it, and it just explained everything. And so throughout the year, he was really an amazing person. He would always tell me to get off my phone because I got good service in that classroom. I get good service in that classroom. He would always tell me to get off the phone. He would tell me and Tracy to like knock it off because we would distract others. But it would make the class fun. If it was getting me in trouble for using the gym bathroom instead of the science hall bathroom, he was an amazing person. He would always have these riddles on the board, and I found them so dumb because I didn't know the answer. But in reality, they were pretty funny. I'm gonna admit that they were funny. Like Jacqueline said, when he zoomed in into our faces for the singing chart, I wanted to cry so bad. Those pictures are from middle school, but he did make an impact in each and everyone's life. He would always check up on me because I had a lot of drama, especially boy drama, and he would listen to it and he would call me dumb, but it's the truth. He was really, if I had to describe Mr. Williams, it would be he had a mark for everyone. He cared about everyone. If you needed someone to talk, his door was always open. And yeah.
I'm so short, Aaron. You sure you got it? Hello, my name is Sheila Perry Raker, and I've known Mike for 5 years. So, first I want to say Mike loved all of his students and all of his staff. That was something that was never, ever in doubt from the moment I ever met him. But I'm one of his grown-up friends. And it's very surreal to me tonight that I am here to talk about Mike and his impact on my life, and I'm not talking to him. Because normally this would be one of the evenings I'd be in his presence, talking to him, laughing, and over a craft beer. One of the things we really enjoyed in common. Mike was definitely somebody who made you believe in yourself. So when I came to the county, I came as a substitute school teacher, and I stayed with Chatham County Schools as a substitute for 5 years. Many of those 5 years, Mike tried to get me to substitute for his class because he knew I had a science degree. And he kept trying to coax me out of Pittsburgh over to Siler City, and I just kept saying, it's just too far for me to go in the morning. But I told him in any case, if I ever did put Jordan Matthews on my list, he could count on me to be his substitute. Unfortunately, I never put Jordan Matthews on my list because other schools kept me busy every single day. I would have loved to have come and met some of his spectacular students. He talked to me all the time about those who he wrote his the college letters for. I almost remember that one where he was like, a student asked me to write the letter and it's like due today. So I think I remember you when that was the case. But Mike always made me believe in myself. I never wanted to become a head teacher, but I did want to get out of substitute teaching. And I would ask Mike, do you really think I could be a teaching assistant? And he said, oh, you'd be absolutely great. So after COVID, when school came back in, I decided this was my chance. I was going to go ahead and try to put in an application for a teaching assistant. But I just really felt kind of not sure about it. So Mike was one of the last people I talked to about it. And if you guys know Mike, when I walked in and said, Mike, really, should I do this? And he did his little thing that he does. He goes, you got this. So I did it. And now I'm a teaching assistant. But one of the things everybody knows is that Mike loves the Ohio State Buckeyes. So when I first met Mike and I knew that he loved the Ohio State Buckeyes, I just simply looked at him and I said, you know, I'm not going to like you. I can't like you. And he was like, but why? I said, because I'm a Wolverine fan. And this is what he said to me. He said, just accept it, you know you're going to lose. And the funny thing is, we always lost. So here we were this year, coming up on the Ohio State-Michigan game, which is always the last game of the season. I was actually looking forward to that moment where we'd come face to face again this year, and he'd look at me and he'd go, you're going to lose. And I just never got to hear that. But here's the coolest thing about Mike. Mike was such a person with such a big heart that even though this year we won, I knew that he was happiest for me that we actually did win. And then I knew that if I saw him as soon as after the win, he'd look at me and he'd go, but you know you're going to lose. Meaning next year, and I always have to concede and say, yeah, I know we're going to lose. So there's a lot of things I'm going to miss about Mike and his jovial spirit, always letting him yank on his long beard, and just being in his presence and hearing him talk about his staff and his students, his love for education, his love for seeing his students move on with their lives after him. That's one of the hardest things that we deal with as teachers, is letting our students go on to live their lives after they've had those few years experience with us. But that's one thing that he cherished, is knowing that he was part of preparing you all for such amazing and successful lives. And then every once in a while he'd hear back from one of the students about how well they were doing in college, wherever they went, or how well they were doing in life as they moved on to different professions, or wherever they might have moved to. But like I said, he's really had a big impact on my life and the life of a whole lot of other grown-ups, as well as a lot of students. And I'm so glad to see so many of the grown-ups in here who we always hung out. We had a little teachers club that we hang out in. And he was so gracious to allow me in the teachers club, even though I don't have a I surely am gonna miss Mike. And yeah, Mike, I'm never gonna lose.
So, I had Mr. Williams for Avid this year, and on Thursdays we would go into his room and do tutorials, and we had to draw a chart on the board, and he had this really old eraser, and I would like joke with him, like, how long have you had this? And he would always say like 6 or 7 years. He would always get onto us about wiping the board with our fingers because our oils got on it. He would just get so mad. I really am gonna miss him, and it's hard walking past that room and like seeing him standing there, but I do know that he's smiling and telling us to keep going, that it'll be okay. And I'm gonna keep that with me forever.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Bob Dayton, for those of you who don't know me. I worked with Mike 1 year, but I've known him for about 13. He was an absolute angel in my life. Rachel said earlier when she was speaking that Mike's been known to let his friends live with him. And at one point, a very difficult time in my life,